Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us for Empowered for Balance. My name is Amabru, your life balance strategist, and today we're going to talk about work-life harmony. And we're going to talk about how we can harmonize our lives and all the different roles that we have as women. I have Jodi Salice joining us. She is very good, and she's a typical example of a woman who is managing so many responsibilities. And she's going to come in and talk to us about how she does it. So she's not giving us just theory, but she's talking about her practical life and the things that she has done that has worked for her as a mom who is homeschooling 3 kids, who manages a business, who is a ministry, and who's doing so many things in the community. But before we go on, if you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button because that is how you're going to get notifications when we upload new episodes every week. Hi, Jodi. How are you?
Hi, Alma. I'm doing so great. I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, sure. Well, I do have my own business. I've been doing graphic design for about 16 years, and this past year, due to COVID, I pivoted my business into more of the brand strategy side of things. So now I teach women how to brand their businesses. I'm also a mom. I'm a divorced mom of 3 young boys, ages 14, 12, and 11. They're amazing. I love them, and they adore and respect me. And I lead worship as a volunteer effort for my church. And goodness, what else do I do? I actually just recently took on a role as a creative director for for United Way. So I serve them now. And goodness, yes. So I am a mom. I'm a business owner. Of course, I am a woman. So I have my self-care. I've got to take care of myself and get my solo time in every now and then. And I mean, that's that. Oh, and of course, I host a community of
Yep.
amazing women entrepreneurs, and I absolutely adore these women. So encouraging to me, and so I manage that, and I think that's about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And one thing I like about you, Jodi, is in spite of all these things that you're managing, you seem very put together. And you
Thank
have this,
you.
there's this sense of peace I feel around you. And so how do you do it? How do you, because I'm always all over the place.
Yeah, well, I love that question. So, for me, a lot of the time, peace is a choice because we have to accept sometimes that we can't be super women,
Yeah.
all the time, and we just have to have peace with that. I always say when people ask me, "My goodness, Jodi, how in the world do you do it?" I always say it's only by the grace of God. Because if it weren't for him, I would be running around like a chicken with my head cut off.
Yeah.
I would be going crazy. I would be probably feeling down on myself all the time because I couldn't uphold a certain standard that the world would like to see me uphold. So, my home life is great. My sons are wonderful. They're obedient. They're respectful. And I attribute a lot of that to goodness. I attribute all of it to just staying obedient to the word of God, to really seek him in all our ways.
Yeah.
Um, if there's ever, say, for example, a disciplinary issue in our home, I always bring it back to, the goodness that God wants us to experience through our good conduct. That's what I
Yeah.
teach my sons. I don't teach my sons, no, you can't do that, stop it, knock it off, that sort of stuff. I teach them, well, I try to steer them away from what the world is tempting them toward. I steer them away from that. And I try to set their minds and their hearts on Christ because that's what he wants. And as
Mm.
long as as long as we keep our focus on Christ, then all that other stuff tends to fall away. So I am not, I don't, as a mom, I'm not like a dictator. I'm not constantly at my sons telling them what to do and what not to do. I just, pray the Lord for his wisdom over my home life,
Mhm.
and for his guiding. And I always just feel that if we speak to our children from a place of love instead of I have to do this because I'm your parent or you have to obey me because I'm the one in charge here, then God always brings our children's hearts to a place where they want to do well, they want to obey. Of course, we're all
Yeah.
human and we all we have our moments and so do they, but that's just life. And as parents, we have to have peace that God's going to do with it as God will do, as only God can do. So I've always prayed that God is going to be the, the husband to me and the father of our home.
Yeah.
And he always has been. So
Yeah.
that is where I get a huge portion of my peace. And all that stuff, all those principles, biblical principles that I lean on in my home life, I lean on them in my business, in my personal life, and in everything. So it's just like I say, it's by the grace of God that I can do all these things.
Wow. I'm so happy about what you're talking about because a lot of times as busy women, high achieving women,
Yeah,
we tend to feel like, and I've also found myself do that sometimes. We tend to feel like, hey, it's about us planning and having the schedule and having all that, trying to be organized. And sometimes we forget that having Jesus or having God at the center of it makes it a lot easier.
it does.
No, so I'm so happy that you're mentioning that. And sometimes I literally have to remind myself, I find myself going 2 steps ahead and I'm like, oh no, I need to go back because it's not about me trying to do it all and be superwoman, but I have to also learn to, let God have his way. So
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And that's a great point, Alma, because we need to allow that space for him to work. And I think certainly I have experienced this myself, and I see other women experiencing it as well, is we tend to think that we need to fill in all the blanks, dot
Yeah.
all the I's, cross all the T's, but we're not allowing space for God to work if we try to assert ourselves in our own power. We just need to give space for him. And that's why I don't lord it over my sons. Or if I can't do the laundry one day, it's okay. I can be okay with that because it's going to get taken care of.
Yeah.
At some point it's going to be. So yeah, we need to allow the Holy Spirit to work in our lives.
Wow. Wow. I know that you're also a woman in ministry, like you mentioned, you volunteer in the church and you're an awesome musician. It's
Oh, thank
awesome.
you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, how are you able to also have the time for, how do you manage that part of your life? Because ministry can be very demanding. So
Yeah.
how do you create that, harmony in that area of your life also?
Well, so I'm not on staff at my church. There is we do have a pastor who is the worship pastor there. He pretty much carries that entire responsibility at the church. I come in, as a volunteer effort. Some weekends I'll lead, some other weekends I will just, serve as a support, a
Mm,
guitarist or a background singer. Um, but my I have lots of women, and not just in my group, but lots of women in my church who, they lean on me as, as a friend and sister, and
mhm,
just come to me for prayer. And that is I had one recently say to me, "I'm sorry, I feel like such a burden." And I had to tell her, I said, "You know what? God tells us, to carry each other's burdens. And it's not to sound like a bad thing, like, oh, there's this burden I got to carry for the Lord. It's not like that. We have the freedom as daughters in Christ to have joy in all of that. It's
yeah.
it's a joy to be able to minister to somebody and see them come through, to see them come through that valley to the other side where God's glory is revealed. That's a joy for me because I know, and we can know because we are daughters of Christ, that moment is inevitable. It's God's glory will be revealed in it some way, somehow, whether it's through a change of circumstance. Sometimes it's not a change of circumstance, but it's a change within our hearts. And that's,
Mm,
for me, that's rewarding. So it's not, when I hear, God say, bear each other's burdens, I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that as a beautiful reason to have joy over having a relationship with somebody going through a struggle and being able to, speak life into them. So,
Yeah.
so ministry, it's just, you have a heart for people, you grieve with them, you mourn with them, and it all just lends to the beauty of God. So, um again, it comes down to the grace of God working and just having joy in all things. And that's why the joy that you see in me, it's sincere. It is.
Yeah.
It's not me just trying to fake it. It's not me just trying to put on this persona so people think I have it all together. It's just real joy because I know that God works and I've seen him work, and there's nothing to be more joyful about as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. 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 And of course, I do agree with you that, you know, it, it's not just about even having a position, because sometimes people think that your success in ministry is about you taking on a role in the church and being extremely active and having the post. I always call it having the role in the post, like, oh, she's the pastor of that. But even doing that in a volunteer way gives you that fulfillment that you have. So
So
that's
true.
good. Yeah,
That's so true.
that's very good. Let's talk a little bit about homeschooling. I know
Okay.
that you've been homeschooling, and when I meet women who homeschool, I'm so fascinated because I tried it and I couldn't figure it out. you know, so I think it's not for everybody, but I know that a lot of us parents and moms have been pushed to do it because we have no choice with this pandemic going on.
Mhm.
So how are you able to organize the boys, three boys, you
Yeah.
know, and get them to
So
stay focused?
okay, yes, I love to talk about this. I'm very passionate about this. This is not to say that my first few years homeschooling, we've been doing it for about 5 years now.
Wow.
Maybe the first 2.5 years or so of homeschooling, it was it was quite a struggle trying to find our routine, trying to find what works with us, well, or works for us. But we finally did, and I just had to. First of all, I had to deschool myself because I went all the way through the public school system, right from preschool to, high school and then college, completely public.
Mhm.
I had no concept of what it was to homeschool. So I had to deschool myself for a while, and I had to deschool my sons, which meant, because they actually went to public school for a few years before we transitioned to homeschool. So when I took them out of public school, it was the reasons that I had were for our values. Their
Yeah.
father and I, we were very concerned about what was going on with, um, the whole gender and bathrooms and other stuff. There was other stuff there, and just knowing what we went through going through public school, as far as indoctrination and all that sort of stuff. So
Mhm.
we had taken them out. It was our heart to do so for many years, and so we deschooled, which meant that we just didn't school. So,
Oh.
which is okay. It's okay. Sometimes we need to detach ourselves because um, in the way that I was used to was I had to duplicate the schoolroom, the classroom at home. I had to make it look like I had the chalkboard and the desks and the markers and the, all that stuff set up, and the index cards on the walls. We don't have to do that. That's just that's just the way the school does it. So I had to kind of detach myself from that whole setup. My sons had some uh, ways that they were trained to the school system that we had to allow them to disconnect from. I also had to kind of give them a chance to realize another reason that we pulled them out of public school was because I couldn't quite jive with the teachers and their ways, and they had their
Mhm.
own systems, and it wasn't working for me. So admittedly, I had gotten a little impatient with my sons in that time. So I had to show my sons that I was willing to, change. They needed to see changes in me. Okay, so after the deschooling, longer story short, we do what's called unschooling. And
Mm.
unschooling is where we we don't stick with any particular curriculum if we don't want to.
Okay.
We we they do their core subjects online, and that is something that they get teaching online. So I don't have to teach them that. So that takes away a huge chunk of my responsibility. So I get back my
Yeah.
time on that. I can go in and manage it and make sure that they're on track, which works. And then everything else like physical education, life skills, all that sort of stuff, we do what's called learning by living, which
Mm.
means that, we don't set structured time to do all that stuff, but as we go through life, as we go to the grocery store or, for a run around the block, I can teach them along the way, and that, according to the state, is considered schooling. And just for the record, I
Mm.
am in New York State, which is one of the most stringent as far as laws are concerned for homeschooling. So I have to make sure that I do everything right.
Yep.
So I do follow the laws. Everything that I'm doing is fine. So we unschool. So the unschooling, the benefit that that provides the children is that they actually get to learn things according to their own pace.
Yeah.
So I am not forcing them to learn how to, do some kind of math thing that they might not be ready for. And if they're ready for it, or if they're not ready for it, I just know my sons, they tend to shut down.
Mm.
So the unschooling allows them to learn things at their own pace. It gives them that breathing space, that space for the Holy Spirit to work, and also I can also teach them, like if we're doing a history lesson, just because we feel like doing one day, I can teach them the same lesson, but my expectations are set to their age.
Yeah.
So I might expect a little bit more from my older son than I would from my younger son,
Mm.
but I'm teaching them one thing. So I'm not teaching three different lessons to three different boys,
Yeah.
so that makes it a lot easier. But
Wow.
yeah. So no, it works out for us, Alma, and I don't feel like it's taking any tremendous amount of my time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that you being able to outsource like the core subject makes it a lot
Yeah,
easier
yeah, it does.
because, you don't have to try to teach them because those ones are really demanding. So,
Yes.
yeah, that's great. So is there a particular, curriculum that they follow with the core subject online?
So we use what's called EP homeschooling, and that is actually free to use. So
Oh, really?
yeah, it's actually free to use. But it's really great. I see, if you kind of go and do your research, you see a lot of kids coming out of it going into college, like, a year or 2 years
Mm,
early. And it's just it's Christian based. So I know that they're
wow.
getting, the kind of education that I would want them to get. But yeah, it's free. It's called ephomeschooling.com, and it walks your child through all of the core subjects, and you know provides suggestions for anything in between, which I
Mm,
don't generally take advantage of because we do the living by learning, but
yeah,
it's good.
yeah.
I recommend it. It's working for us.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
this is very eye-opening because when I tried doing my homeschooling, I was trying to do everything.
Yeah, I hear
And that
you.
is why I think I got frustrated. And I'm sure a lot of the women who are listening or even watching on YouTube would identify with what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
I identify because I was frustrated in the beginning. Like I said, I thought I had to dot every I, cross every T.
Exactly. Yep, yep. Wow, wow. So with you doing the on what do you call it? Is it deschooling or unschooling?
Deschooling we did first. That was no school
Okay,
at all. And then the unschooling, which is legal in New York State.
okay.
It sounds like you're not schooling, but it just means that you're not doing it like the classroom. You're doing
Yeah.
it according to your own terms.
Yep, yeah. So with you doing that, are there any, tests or anything that the kids take at a certain point just to make sure that they have what they need?
Yeah, so what I do is I actually do all of the I have to provide all of the quarterly reports. So by each time that I get to a quarterly report, I sit down with my sons and I make sure that they are, on point with everything, that they have good, firm understanding. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes I need to work through them with things. And then when we get to the end of the year, then they do their standardized tests,
Okay.
and they've been doing well on those. So that's really kind of how I monitor them, aside from just checking and making sure that they're on track each day with their schooling.
Yeah, yeah, great, great. And how old is your youngest? I'm just trying to make sure that, the age.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's 11.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah,
they're pretty independent then.
they are,
Yeah.
and they make me proud. They do a really good job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So for the woman out there, who has been forced into homeschooling, I know, yes, for us, we are following the curriculum that the school gave us, and the school gives us
Yes.
materials that the kids have to do. But for that woman who is struggling, trying to juggle working from home, with the kids being home and trying to do everything, what would you advise her to do to create some form of sanity in her world right now?
Yeah. So, oh goodness. This may be a little controversial, but I'm just going to say it is I'm just speaking from the heart here. Um, again, one of the reasons that I took my sons out of public school was I couldn't jive with the teachers and their curriculum. None of that was working for my boys and where they were and where we wanted to be in terms of our values, the things that the goals that I have for the longer
Hmm.
outlook for their life. And so that means that, I don't care if they learn trigonometry. I don't care. So I don't have to teach them trigonometry, but what I can teach them is how to manage their money, how to invest,
Yeah.
how to run a business, how to be entrepreneurs. That's stuff they don't teach in school. So my
Mm.
answer, is, my goodness, if you're homeschooling anyway, detach yourself from the public school system so you can do it your own way. Send
Yeah.
in your letter of intent to homeschool on your own terms. Why
Mm.
not?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then once COVID passes, if you want to put them back in the public school system, you have the freedom to do that. But as long as you're already homeschooling, just just homeschool for sure, for certain, homeschool all the way, do it on your own terms. And that way you're not having to adhere to specific curricula. If you've
Yeah.
got two or three or four kids and you're going to doing it the public school way, then you have four different sets of homework that you
Yep.
have to do every night, when you would really just rather be, instead of fighting with your children to get the homework done, you would just rather be having, nice family time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can do that when you homeschool, because when you homeschool, you're not required to do all that extra work. And you can
Mm.
have a single lesson that you present to each child, no matter their age. So
Yeah.
that's my advice.
All right, let's talk a little bit about business.
Yeah.
I know that I have worked with you. You've done a lot of graphic designing for me. You did a lot with the book and the planner. So in terms of business, how are you able to, because there's a lot that you do as a businesswoman, and I know you're a solopreneur, so you must be managing the money, the bookkeeping, and all that. So how are you able to create that structure and also organize that side of your life so that everything seems to be flowing nicely in a nice harmony?
Great question. So in terms of the bookkeeping, I've got my systems in place. I use GoDaddy bookkeeping. That one works the
Oh,
best for
haven't
me.
heard about that one.
Yeah, it's $10 a month, but it doesn't have so many bells and whistles that I can't manage the whole thing. I tried the whole QuickBooks thing, but it's just too much for me. I'm a free spirit. I'm not a math person. I can't do with numbers. So Google bookkeeping or GoDaddy yeah, I can't speak. GoDaddy bookkeeping works well for me. It has just what I need. Anytime I have a client, they go through that system. I send them an invoice, their payment goes through that, and it also tracks all of my expenses for me.
Yeah.
So anytime I make an expense with my bank account or a debit card or whatever, or my PayPal account, it tracks that for me. It enters it for me. It does all of that. All I have to do is just go in and check and make sure everything looks right.
Yeah.
So by the end of the year, come tax season, all I have to do is, check everything, make sure nothing looks out of whack, and then, transfer it to TurboTax and I'm good to go. So I don't need to spend a whole ton of time on my bookkeeping because everything is pretty much automated. I've probably got some bookkeepers right now shaking their head at me, but hey, that's what works for me. I'm very simple. I try to, as far as everything else, I try to have my CEO time each day.
Mm,
And I set aside certain hours for productivity. I set aside certain hours for coffee chats, making those connections and managing my
mm-hmm.
group. And I try not to overwhelm myself. I have to put strict boundaries on myself. Once 12 o'clock hits, I make sure I stand up, stretch, go get something to eat. And once, I try to be done by 2 o'clock each day.
Yeah.
So once that time hits, I get off my computer. I'm done. I have to walk away.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
Wow. Great, great. I'm loving our conversation because I can see that you're being very real with us. But, we've spent our time talking about all the things that you do as a woman. So now let's talk about your self-care. you
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
how are you able to make time for yourself and have some form of self-care? And what do you do for self-care?
Sure. So, so as you know, I have three sons, and they know me. They read me very well, but they also know that I have a routine that I do my work during the day. I check in on their homework, but once evening hits, if it's we have scheduled family time every Friday night. That's our family time we spend together doing something. But most every other night, they know that I set aside time in the evening to just lock myself in my room and do
hmm
whatever I do. So I am an introvert, so I need that time. If I don't get that time,
Yeah.
they know that if I don't get that time, that I start to not be the same person, if you catch my drift. So they're happy to let me go because they have their own things that they like to do. They're occupied, they play together, they're gamers too. So yeah, so what do? I love to read. I love to learn new things. I play guitar. I Sometimes I might just catch something on Netflix or, spend an evening, doing my nails or doing a facial or something like that. But that's really kind of the gist of it. I just love to get in those couple of hours of myself time where I can
Yeah.
detach from work, detach from the constant needs of being a mom. Now that my boys are older, they can self-manage. And Yeah, that pretty much covers it. I don't do anything.
Yep.
I've never been one to really go to the spa,
Yeah.
although I should try it sometime. I've never been one to go and get my nails done or anything like that. Never went for a massage, but I don't know. Maybe that's something I would try. But I get I feel like all of my, I feel like I get back to myself just fine just by having my quiet time reading
Yeah.
and doing my nails. And I
Yep.
don't really do my
Yep.
nails. So I just, just the other day I buffed them and filed them. That's the extent of my nail doing. Um,
Yeah.
when I play guitar, I tend to scrape them up, so I don't even really bother
Yep.
with polish. So
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's so great you mentioned, everything you've mentioned had nothing to do with spending money or anything, and I
Right.
like that. That's the kind of self-care I really like
Yes.
because it makes it look simple for us women. Because a lot of us don't do the self-care because we think that it's about going to the spa or buying expensive stuff or spending a lot of
Exactly.
money. So then it creates a lot of blocks for us when we think about self-care. So I like the way you talk about it and saying, look, it's just about you going into your room and having your quiet time and doing whatever you want to do with yourself, away
Exactly.
from everything else. And I think that's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Affirming for me.
Great. Yep, yep. I've really enjoyed this conversation because you have really broken down how you manage all the responsibilities that you have and even have time for yourself by scheduling time for yourself and
Yeah.
making your kids know that mommy has her time where she needs to be by herself. And I
Yeah.
think that is great, being firm about it and being structured with that and knowing that from this time to this time is my time and it's non-negotiable. And that's what a lot of us women struggle with, because sometimes when we try to implement that, we get a lot of pushback,
Mm.
from our families. So, have you ever had to deal with pushback, in trying to create that time for yourself?
Um, from my family aside from my sons?
Or even from anybody else, any kind of pushback.
No, no, actually, no. I think because I think most everybody thinks that based on everything that I do, that I probably deserve it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I don't get pushback from that.
Wow, that's good. That's great, great, great. All right, so we're about to end, and what are your last words for us, for we women trying to get this harmony, trying to figure out how we can manage ourselves, the woman out there who's trying to homeschool, anything. What are your last words for
Yeah.
us?
So I think the biggest thing that I want to leave for the ladies is, be okay with being imperfect.
Yeah.
It's okay to kind of let things slide a little bit until you get to that place where maybe you have a better strategy. But in the meantime, be good with yourself, be gentle with yourself, have mercy on yourself, allow the grace of God to work in your life. Again, we don't need to be everything, we don't need to do every jot and tittle. Just just let it breathe a little bit, and
Yeah.
it's okay to do so.
Yep. Yep. I love that. Be okay with being imperfect.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Jodi. I
Well,
really
thank you.
appreciate you taking time off your busy schedule to be with us and to share your personal life. I think it's a great sacrifice you've done for us here.
Well, thank you, Amma. This was a really nice time. I really appreciate you.
And thank you so much for joining us till the end. And hey, if you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button because that is how you're going to get notifications when we upload new episodes every week. Again, this has been Amma Brew, your life balance strategist. And before I go, as Jodi said, be okay with being imperfect and allow God to have his way in your life whilst you're trying so hard to manage all the things that you're trying to manage as a busy woman of faith who's trying to shift from burnout to balance. I hope to see you next week and take good care of yourself. Bye.